Have you just partaken in business with somebody that you feel broke their promise? Or maybe you purchased a new item or unit for your business and you feel the item is not at all how it was described. If these scenarios sound at all like they describe something that's happened to you, then you're going to want to keep on watching, because in this video we're going to talk about the broken promises of the law, otherwise referred to as misrepresentations, and talk about what you can do if you feel you've been the victim of misrepresentations made by another party and you have suffered damages to your business, for example, as a result of relying on these misrepresentations and maybe purchasing a business unit or some type of inventory or something that a good or a service that you bought from another party. If you're new to this channel, welcome. Make sure you click subscribe and give this video a big thumbs up. Here at Graphene Business Law, we post content relevant for business owners and entrepreneurs every single week. And we're the only law firm that we know of doing so. So again, make sure you give us a big thumbs up and click subscribe to show some support for all this free education and information that we're putting out there when it comes to the world of business law, again, with a particular focus of business owners. Graphene Business Law services business owners and entrepreneurs virtually throughout the province of Ontario, Canada. Now, misrepresentations. Misrepresentations are, why is the topic of misrepresentations important? We've all been there as little kids. Maybe we were duped by a sibling or a parent or a neighbor, some sort of quasi-innocent scenario where we were told, hey, you take this toy car, it runs really fast. And then, in reality, it was just some sort of trick to shut you up or get you to exchange a better toy with your sibling or something like that. And the toy, in fact, didn't run really fast at all, despite you making the decision to, in fact, take that car because of the communications or the representations made by the other party that you should take this toy car because it runs really fast. Now, that sort of scenario that we've probably all experienced as kids evolves in the adult world as well, in the form of, in the everyday world, broken promises, being let down, things like that, relying on somebody, betrayals even. These are concepts we're familiar with in the daily world. However, in business, of course, the same concepts exist because it's human beings doing business, just like it's human beings out there in the real world, sort of duping each other. And what is the word for a broken promise almost? If you were to make a parallel for the term in the everyday world, what is that term in the business world? It's a misrepresentation. What's a representation? Let's start with the root of that word. A representation is the business law way of saying, a statement made, statement that you obviously we can't use the same word in the sentence and say you represented, but a statement that you communicated to the other party about whatever it may have been that you communicated was the truth of that state, of that good or that service, or what have you. Okay, so when that communication is broken because you were fraudulent or sneaky or ill-intended in what you communicated, you just communicated it sort of to make a quick sale for yourself, to throw one over the other party's eyes, things like that, well, then you've done something called a you misrepresented what you said. What you said wasn't all that true, and not just that, but it actually caused the other party to suffer because you knew the other party wanted to buy, that car from your lot, for example, to enhance their business operations, and they told you that, and you were clear with that, and you knew your car wouldn't run more than an extra week after it drove off the lot, but you communicated to them that this car was the best car on your lot and it would run, for years to come. And again, you knew that that was not the case. So that's, I've given all these examples in this video of what misrepresentations look like, both in the real world and in the business world. And why did I start with the examples? I started with the examples because I feel almost, having once been not familiar with the legal world at all myself, of course, I wasn't born a lawyer, I feel that there's almost this thing where the longer a business term is, the more scary it almost is. Okay, so I wanted you to know that the concept of misrepresentations is actually not something that should be foreign to you at all. It's probably something you've experienced in your life already, although you might be watching this video because now you're experiencing it, to a point or a scope where it's too much to bear anymore. Your business has really suffered, your finances are really suffering, and so on and so forth. So if you feel you are in this category where somebody has duped you, so to speak, what is the legal test for a misrepresentation? Keeping in mind, Graphene business law is located or headquartered in Ontario, Canada, and law, of course, is jurisdictional not just across countries, but sometimes across states and territories and provinces as well. I do want to make the disclaimer that this is from the Ontario angle. As much as there is overlap between jurisdictions like the US and Canada and the UK, things like that, I still want to disclaim that I'm talking here as an Ontario lawyer, okay? Generally speaking, there's going to be 5 elements you need to make out in a legal test for misrepresentation. And the case specifically that I'm going to cite in this video is Chaba and Khan, 2020 case that was heard at the Ontario Court of Appeal. This case doesn't say anything new. I just really like, it's pretty succinct in making out the 5-part test for misrepresentation. The first element that you're going to want to meet, the defendant, of course, there's plaintiff and defendant, but if you're the one starting a lawsuit, you're not suing yourself, you're suing the other guy, and the initiating party is called the plaintiff, so the other guy necessarily is called the defendant, okay? So the 5-part test is that the defendant made a statement that was false. That is the starting point, okay? This statement could have been made intentionally, unintentionally, whatever the case may be. We'll get into that as we build up on the test. But the first element, there's no misrepresentation if the statement wasn't false. So in other words, if something was described exactly as it was and you bring it home and it's just not fit for your services, but the item actually functions exactly as it was supposed to, that's not a misrepresentation. That's just, you should have done better research. It's not on the defendant. It is on the defendant, again, point number 1, if a false representation was made. The second point you're going to want to meet, that the defendant knew that the statement was false, or that the defendant was reckless about the state of truth. As to whatever they were misrepresenting. Why is this important? I mean, the law at the end of the day, in theory, should be about justice. So holding some poor schmuck liable because you were sold some dud of a product that they didn't even know was a dud of a product, that doesn't necessarily further the interests of the justice system, right? When we're talking about misrepresentation, there's that like naughty element to it. If you're taken back to the, toy car scenario as kids, right? Like your brother, when he gave you some piece of crap toy car in return for the latest rocket ship mom and dad had bought you, he knew that this toy car was a piece of crap. So same case scenario in the adult world. The party, the defendant, had to have known that what they were saying was not true, or they were so careless about finding out what they were saying was not true that, again, that falls on them, because they could have easily found out that the state of something was false had they, turn on the engine at the car on their lot. They would have known if the car ran or not. But, instead they told you, this car runs perfectly fine, when it's got holes in the hood and is leaking gas, and they don't even bother to get it checked. And they're a car, dealership in this example. And again, they tell you, it'll run. So in that case, arguably that kind of character would be captured by just being so reckless as to the, truth of what they told you. The third, okay, and again, now we're building up on intentionality on behalf of the defendant, right? So what was on the defendant's mind? The third element that needs to be met is that the defendant made the misrepresentation. So far, we have the 2 parts of the test, that a false statement was made and that the false statement was basically made intentionally or so carelessly given that we can kind of group it with an intentionally made false statement anyways, but also that the defendant, intended to get you to act in making that statement. So again, if you are going to some car dealership that's full of lemons and the defendant is just throwing, words he knows are false out there about how amazing all these cars are, but he doesn't care at all if you buy or not. He doesn't even think you might buy. He's like, this one's great, that one's great, oh, these are all so great. And, he is not trying to get you to buy. He's not telling you, do I have a car for you? This is the car for you. this is going to meet all your needs, and so on and so forth. He's just like sputtering random statements that don't have to do with anything in particular, let alone having to do with you acting on the sale, okay? Then it might not be misrepresentation, because again, the third element of the test requires that the defendant wanted you to act based on what he was saying. So picture a scenario, you and your buddy go to the lot and you're telling your friend, how you are looking specifically for a car that can handle a lot of weight. You're going to put a hitch in the trailer in the back, and so on and so forth. And then the salesman in a car lot full of lemons comes to you and says, I have a car for you, Jeff. This car, the best part about this car, man, it can go long distances with a heavy load in the back. Because he just heard you, and he knows that if you hear that aspect about the towing capacity of the car, you're going to be in, you're going to buy. That's of course, misrepresentations are not always that obvious, but I'm trying to make it obvious to simplify the legal test. That's the third element, that the defendant intended to get you to act. There was something personal there to you. Now, the fourth part of the test flips it back on the plaintiff, because if we look at all the first three aspects that had to do with the defendant making a false statement, knowing it was false, knowing it would induce you into acting, that whole picture, but your visit at the car shop stops there, and you, Jeff, walk off the shop or walk off the dealership lot, and you never bought anything from this misrepresenting defendant, then you obviously lost nothing. There's no damages you suffered. So the fourth part flips it back to you. Did you actually act in this picture? Did you buy, that lemon car that was represented to you as having the best towing capacity in its class? If so, now the plot thickens, because it opens up the opportunity that you actually suffered. And why do I say that you actually suffered? Because that's the fifth part of the test, and all of these 5 points need to be met. It's not an or, it's an and. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, all the elements need to be met, okay? Because now picture a scenario, and we're building up the plot here. Picture a scenario where you ended up buying this lemon piece of crap car from the dealer that was, that the dealer was trying to dupe you into saying it had a lot of carrying capacity. But, between the time you sign and the 2 days later you go and pick up the car, somebody ended up just randomly working on the car. Some serviceman at the shop had so much free time that they were like, let me fix this old clunker in the back. And when you bring the clunker home, miraculously, it can actually carry a heavy load. You didn't suffer anything. In this scenario, you suffered nothing. The car is now perfectly fit for your purposes. So that's why, to rule out, that sort of scenario, again, I'm oversimplifying, but I'm doing it so that, hopefully you understand a little better. That's why the fifth part of the test is that you actually suffered. You brought the truck home, it broke down, you had to buy a whole other truck, your shipment couldn't make it to the place it needed to on time because you couldn't haul, that heavy load in the back, and so on and so forth. That is the 5-part test for misrepresentation. And misrepresentation is always a funny one to me, because as I alluded to in the video, it's a long word. It makes it look like a super, intimidating legal concept, but it's actually what the naughty kids were doing all along, trying to dupe you into something, and now it happens in the business world. That's not to make light, by the naughty kids analogy, that's not to make light of the fact that misrepresentation, if you rely on a certain kind of misrepresentation, it can completely shut down your business. I know as a business lawyer how grave the consequences of having been, having had something misrepresented to you are. I know that. And I guess I'll end this video by saying, speaking of, I'll end this video by saying that if you are struggling with misrepresentation right now, on either side of it, to be fair, at Graphene Business Law, we can help you if you're the party that has suffered. So if you are the plaintiff or the defendant, we can help you protect, yourself and make your case. You're entitled to that, to put your best case forward in the law as well. You can reach out to us anytime, graphenebusinesslaw.ca, and our email is info@graphenebusinesslaw.ca. I want to thank you for watching this video. I am so proud of the community we're building here on Graphene Business Law's YouTube channel, and one of the best ways to continue to build that community is from comments and interactions and engagement from you, the very audience that has helped make this channel what it is right now. Thank you so much for watching.